Ladies and gentlemen, this RedGamingTed.com video, we're going to be discussing the PlayStation 4's launch. And indeed, Sony are saying that they are not expecting or planning a major loss to be occurred with the launch of the PS4. So what the heck does that mean? Well, I think this can be summed up with a couple of quotes. Let's go into this. Unlike the PS3, we are not planning a major loss to be incurred with the launch of the PS4. And that was said by Sony's CFO's Chief Financial Officer. And then at the time we would develop the PS3, we made a lot of in-house investments to develop the chip, the cell chip. Development of the chip saw the silicon processing all the facilities invested by ourselves. But this time, yes, we have a team working on chip development. We already have existing technology to incorporate, and also product investment, and all the facilities will now be invested by our partners and other foundries, so we don't have to make the investment in-house. Now, interestingly, Sony did not offer any sales forecast for the PS4 up until the year ending 31st of March 2014, and unfortunately, it wasn't planned or asked by anyone either, which isn't exactly ideal. So let's get into this just for a second. Most of the time, as I've said to you at numerous times in videos, companies either launch at a profit per system, for example, the original Wii, or they sell systems for a loss, the Xbox. In case of the PlayStation 3, of course, it was a massive investment in terms of cost because of the cell CPU and the various complexities of the console. Now, right now, we know that last year, Sony made a huge financial loss. It was actually the biggest in company history, or at least for 10 years or so. But now they have Cass Haray, who is, of course, is now in charge of the company, and he decided to streamline the organization. Now, he's done that by cutting some jobs, and by cutting jobs, I mean thousands of jobs, and then he started to sell various offices, and those have been in Japan and America, plus a few other bits and pieces, including Sony's stakes in Dena, that's D-E-N-A, as well as MS Holdings. Now, then they went out and they acquired the Gaikai. Now, of course, Gaikai is going to be for cloud gaming, most likely going to be tied in to the PlayStation 4. So obviously Sony are really trying to hit home with that at the moment. So Sony's annual profit was 43 billion yen. That's around what was predicted, which is 458 million US dollars. Okay, so we know now just how much they made, but what about the game segment? Well, before we get into the game segment, it's worth noting that companies, and should I say companies as in Microsoft as well, are experiencing less sales because, let's face it, who doesn't own a PlayStation 4, PlayStation 3, I'm sorry, or an Xbox 360 by now? Most people do. Anyway, in the game segment, the sales were down about 12.2%. In operating income, however, was down 94%. That's around 18 million, and that's an ouch, no matter which way you want to slice it. The actual combined PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 2 sales are down to only 16.5 million. In case you're wondering, there were 18 million the year before. So that's a drop once again. However, who doesn't own a PlayStation 2 or who wants to buy a PS2 now? Obviously, there are some emerging markets that are still purchasing them, but generally speaking, most people just don't care about the PS2 at this point, and so it's left all the way down to PS3. However, once again, with the PlayStation 4 on the horizon, realistically, are you going to want to buy a PS3 if you haven't owned one by this point? Most likely not. You probably are just going to hold your horses, if you will. So that's the problem. On the other hand, the PSP and Vita have actually gone up. They've gone from I'm sorry, 7 million total. On the other hand, there were 6.8 the previous year, so it's a small rise. It's not huge. However, Of course, this is somewhat offset because the PSP's, the Vita price, shall I say, has actually been cut in Japan. So if you think about it, it's kind of like, yeah, you've sold less, so you've sold more, but you're actually gaining less money per sale, so it kind of offsets itself. On the other hand, it's sometimes better just to have a larger install base. Now, obviously, sales are expected to increase significantly, and that's a quote, primarily due to the planned introduction of the PlayStation 4 in the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2014. On the other hand, operating income is expected to essentially flat year on year, primarily due to the increase in research and development expenses and the marketing expenses related to the introduction of the PS4, offset by the impact of the above mentioned increase in sales. In case you're wondering what that means, to translate it, they're going to spend a hell of a lot more money to market the system and to actually research on how to develop for the system in both the APIs as well as for developers and so on. On the other hand, they're going to make a hell of a lot more money because, well, they're going to be selling a new console, and obviously it's most likely that's going to be selling like hotcakes, and that's absolutely fantastic. Sony are also expecting to sell around 11 million units of the PlayStation 3 in this financial year, which is not too shabby either. And it believes that 5 million PSP and PSV Vita units will be sold as well, which is down from this year. That's not exactly a great sign if you're a Vita owner or you're thinking about owning a Vita, or a good news for the Vita in general. So what about non-gaming? So we know that gaming has been reasonable for Sony. They've got pretty good foothold in the market, but of course it's the TVs, the smartphones, and so on that have really been a thorn in Sony's side. And it's been described as a must for the company to actually start to transform those sales, particularly the TV sales, which are fairly iffy, I believe would be the best technical term possible for them. It's worth noting that the other segments that they are involved in, however, are doing okay. They're fairly stable. So what could you take from this? Well, there's many things you could take from this, as you generally can. However, as an overall, it's fairly positive news if you are a Sony fan, and even if you're not, it's pretty good news for Sony in general. It's becoming more profitable, and that's always a good thing, because obviously if you've got more profit, you can certainly produce much better products. Anyway, I think that's just about it for this particular video. Hopefully you found it somewhat informative, and I will see you soon. Take care, and bye for now.